Hello guys, John Talley here with Partzilla.com, coming to you live once again from our studios at our distribution center. And once again, guess what? Everybody has left me hanging, so I'm having to do this solo. So if it's a little glitchy as we move along, it's going to be my fault. So be patient. I'm having to learn all these keyboards. I feel like a Rick Wakeman or something like that. That tells you how old I am. We're going to start off with a couple of questions. Looks like they're already starting to pour in, and I'll do my best to answer them for you on this fine Friday. All right, Jason is asking me, hey John, I was curious to where the crankcase vent tube on a 1996 Honda Foreman 400 4x4. Are you asking me where it goes? More than likely, it runs up on the back side of the frame to the highest point it can get to right at the steering juncture. So more than likely, it is just venting to atmosphere at that location. And so it'd be really important not to let water get up that high. And plus, if it's that high, you're pulling it into your intake system anyway. But I believe that's where it runs. If you pulled off the seat in the fuel tank, you would probably see several of those vent tubes running down the side of the frame and then up at the steering neck. All right. Robert is asking me, I'm replacing the cylinder liners in my 2006 Kawasaki 500R. None of the service manuals, including Kawasaki, cover how to install the liners, nor if they have any retaining compound and sealing them in at the top. Can you please explain how to properly install these liners, i.e. freezing the liners for 24 hours or just to put the O-ring, or just put the O-rings and let the grease hold it together? Also, do the new OEM liners come pre-honed, so all you have to do is just install them? All right, it's been a while since I've messed with the liners, because anything you're going to have out here that's new is usually Nicosil or some type of some type of plating, so it's not just raw metal in there anymore. But you are working with a bike that actually has steel cylinders, so you're putting in the liners. The ones that I've worked before, I always let the machine shop do it, and when they were able to press out the old one, they would, of course, have a differential in temperature and then drop in the other one. I've even seen some of them where you install them and they actually can still move around until you bolt down the head, and the head is what actually holds it in place. So I'd be a little hesitant to advise you on the best way to do this, because I've never actually had to do that before. I'd always taken it to the machine shop and let them handle it. As far as the honing inside, it should be really easy to tell. If you can look in there and you can see the cross hatch with angles about like this, you're good to go. It just needs to be cleaned up, because as clean as all the manufacturers are of all their parts, they still need to be gone through before you actually start assembly. When you go through there with a shop tile lint-free and a little bit of contact cleaner, you'll be amazed what actually comes out of those surfaces. So definitely clean it up before you go. But once again, I really think I would have to recommend taking it to a machine shop that has an older gentleman that has had to work with sleeves before. Sorry, I really can't advise you on that, but hey, I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction and give you information that I haven't personally done before and then end up causing you a problem. So that's my answer, a non-answer or a redirect. All right, Nighthawk is asking me, hey John, my 03 Yamaha Kodiak has trouble getting up the hill. It seems like it's flooding itself out. Also, I noticed to give it full throttle from stop, it bogs down. What could it be? Well, actually, that sounds like your float level is going to be off, and it is not filling up the float bowl all the way. And when you're first getting into it, it's having trouble pulling fuel, and the hill is even making that worse, because depending on where your pickup jet is inside of your fuel bowl or the float bowl itself, it may be on the front side, and when you go up the hill, that's getting even further away from the fuel. So drop that float bowl and then do a measurement on your float height and then adjust accordingly. And if you're not sure what that height is, I think in your case you can get away with just bending that tab ever so slightly so it lets more fuel into the float bowl, and then see what happens. All right, Stephen is asking me my question, how can I apply to work at the Partzilla warehouse in Albany, Georgia? Well, if you go to our parent company website, the Outdoor Network, there is an actual section on the site where you can see what jobs are available and go in there, put in your resume, so to speak, and then we'll put you on file. And who knows, maybe they'll have you in here working with me one day since none of my other guys are showing up. I'm telling you what, they're just dropping like flies around here. And I still didn't get my pay increase from doing their job. Guess I'm gonna have to write HR about that. Oh, Brittany, you've got faith in me, girl. Yeah, I can do this. I'm just making it up as I go. And cheers to you, DGC. All right, Jason is asking me, the way on this one is okay, that's back to the 400. It's coming out of the crankcase, comes to a T, and goes to the bottom of the skid plate, and the other part comes out under the air intake tube. Well, I can believe that. It's splitting in two directions. It's letting any oil go out that bottom part of the T and letting air come behind it, so it'll actually vent out air from the crankcase itself. So that would make sense. Michael's asked me, you're doing good. I am. That's nice to know. Thank you, seriously. Who is the cheapest to ship me parts for the 1985 Big Red? Man, I haven't heard about one of those in a while. Actually, I assembled those at the shop that was over on Oglethorpe here in Albany a long time ago. Well, of course, it's going to be us. I believe we have a best price match guarantee, and if not, well, we're going to match yours whatever you can find. And if we've got the parts, we're going to make that happen. So let us know what you need. Benjamin is asking me, I have a 2016 YFZ 450R. It has a Power Commander 5 with full DAZA exhaust. It seems to backfire on deceleration and miss at low RPMs, and I'm wondering if that seems like I could need a valve adjustment. Those two things that you're talking about are usually not indicative of the valves being out of whack. Maybe the hesitation at low RPMs, I might be able to buy that one. But as far as your backfire on deceleration, you're probably hearing that, A, because you've got the Commander on there, but B, any aftermarket exhaust usually is more open than an OEM one. And the OEM one is designed to pretty much mask most of these sounds that become apparent when you put a free-flowing exhaust on there, which the DAZA system is. So it was probably making that backfire noise or backfiring when you had your stock one on there, but now you can hear it because you have a different exhaust. But and beyond that, it never hurts to go in and take a look at your valves and just to make sure they're in check. Over time, they usually start to tighten up, and then you need to get them back into spec, because if they get too tight, it's going to do two things. It's going to make it really hard to start, unpredictable off the low-end throttle, and it's going to prematurely wear your cam because it's working a little bit harder than it should, getting those tolerances a little too close. All right, Blake is asking me, hey John, I'm rebuilding a 1997 YFZ 750R, and I've bled the clutch multiple times. However, when bleeding is done, the clutch lever is impossible to pull. Slave piston is closed. Good clutch rod ideas. Well, there has to be something holding it back, either on the master side or the slave side. If you're telling me you've gone through the no, you haven't actually gone through the master or the slave. I think it's time to open those up, because I think what we're going to find is that that piston inside of your master is probably gummed up in there, and it's just not letting it go forward. So I'd say open that up and take a look at that piston inside of your master. All right, thanks to International. Danielle Klingler, my boyfriend's BMW won't start. You're killing me, man. You're killing me. Tell him to send me, it's my son's girlfriend, tell him to send me the reasons or what's happening exactly, and I will get to him as soon as I finish streaming. I swear, these kids. Hey, he's an electrical engineer, or almost. Tell him to figure it out. Good grief. Look at the schematic. All right, greetings from Greece. Greetings from the United States to you. All right, James is asking, I have a 2003 Suzuki Vinson. I went to change the wet clutch shoes, got everything back together, and now it won't shift. Whew. You're going to have to give me a little bit more to go on in there. If you just went in and replaced the centrifugal clutch, wet clutch shoes, I think that's what you're talking about, that tells me you may have put something together wrong. So I'd say pull it back apart, bring up that particular model and look at on our website and look at our exploded parts diagrams and just make really sure that you put everything back exactly like it was supposed to be, because having a washer one out of place one direction or another throws everything off. They're all in there at a specific place, and they have to go back the same way. So chances are, I hate to burst your bubble, you may have done something wrong on reassembly. So go in there, take a peek, and then compare it to the exploded diagrams very carefully to see where your mistake may be. Blake's responding back, I replaced the master with 3 different ones and cleaned and achieved the same results. Wow, well, that leaves us just going down to the master then, because you've got the master up here, the line coming down, and then a slave. And if that system is clean from top to bottom, if it's not A, it's not B, then it's got to be C. So get in there and take a peek. Beyond that, look at your clutch to make sure you didn't do anything that would inhibit the plates from being able to release. Maybe it wasn't seated all the way. Make sure it was actually assembled correctly and it's not able to push in on those springs and release. So go in there, take a look, make sure it's lined up like it's supposed to be to where it can actually expand out to release pressure on the clutch plates. All right, Martin is asking me, hey John, I have a 2017 Raptor 700. I know that one really well, or the engine at least. And I went through some through a deep puddle, and the exhaust and intake. I'll be with you in a second, Hank. The exhaust and intake went underwater and a bit of water and came out of the drain. Now it's a slow river, clogged filter. Yeah, if you went all the way under like that, it is time to park the machine and open it up. Open up your air intake, take out your filters or your filter, clean out the intake that's going into your throttle body. Go ahead and drain your oil because it needs to be going through at this point. I would probably even go through the fuel system as well, even though it is a closed system on the 2017. It's just a matter of taking everything down and do it soon, because you've evidently got water in places it's not supposed to be. And the longer it stays there, the more damage it's going to do. If you go ahead and break it down and do it quickly, chances are you can just clean it back up, put in some fresh oil, clean out your intake, and then you're going to be good to go. And on that one, I believe the filter is reusable on the intake. So it shouldn't be that big of a deal. All right, yeah, Blake, when you go through it, if you find the answer, send us a message, in one of the comment sections below, because we do go back and read them. And, I'm curious. I want to know, what's going on, and if I'm right, and if I'm not, correct me. And that way, if I'm ever asked that question again, that I can, pass on that information, because honestly, that's what I do for a living. I mean, I didn't invent all this stuff. I've just worked on it long enough that I know a couple of things, and I'm just sharing the way to keep your motorcycle, ATV, or side-by-side, on the road, track, or trail. That sounded pretty good. I may need to copyright that one. Write that down. All right, Benjamin came back. So you're saying that an aftermarket exhaust is designed to backfire like that? Is there any way to get rid of that, or would I just have to get a different exhaust? No, I'm just saying sometimes an aftermarket exhaust will make it more apparent. As far as getting rid of that, I believe it's been a while since I've tuned one, because I usually just pop in a map like everybody else and let it run. To cure a backfire, I think you add fuel on decel, so go into that particular cell at under 1,000 RPMs and add fuel to your air fuel chart, and that should drown it out, so to speak. All right, James is asking me, can a Power Commander 3 work on a 2004 Suzuki GSX-R? That's going back a little while. The Power Commander 3 came out in 2005, 2006. So chances it'll plug directly into a 14 Suzuki of any type, I really doubt it. I'd be afraid to do it because you run the risk of damaging, even if the adapters would work, you run the risk of damaging your ECU, because Power Commander is basically a piggyback system, and it's negotiating an air-fuel ratio, if you will, with your ECU. So I'd be afraid to try that. Angeline is asking me, what are the reasons for a weak spark, new proper spark plug? Typically, that is going to be on just about all your machines, your actual CDI and or your coil. Your coil is starting to get weak, and it's just not delivering that really solid punch that you need from a spark. So I would look at your ignition system, whatever that might be. I mean, if it's in the CDI itself, well, there's your answer. Or if it's a coil system, well, go ahead and replace your coil. All right, Brian's asking me, I don't remember which machine we're talking about here, Brian. What size socket do I use to break it off? I don't remember which machine you're talking about, Brian. Which bolt are we talking about? So get that back to me. What does it mean when a two-stroke knocks when running hot? You're pre-igniting your engine, and you're going to melt those rings and or your piston. So that tells me it's running way, way too lean, and you need to add fuel. So if it's doing that wide open throttle, you need to either adjust your throttle body, or if it's an older machine, which I'm betting it probably is, you need to go up a jet size on your main to get it back in the ballpark. Otherwise, you're gonna have a meltdown in there. I don't think you want to go through that. James is asking me, so what would cause an 04 R6 to be killing the plugs? Typically, when you're saying it's killing the plugs, that it's running so rich, it's fouling them out. My question would be, what programmer do you have on it? What's your intake? What's your exhaust? Does it have a programmer? Which map are you running? Because it sounds like it's running too rich, and it's just wearing out the plug, or sooting up the plugs way too quickly. So give me a little bit more information, and we'll take a peek at it. All right, Donald is asking me, I just recently bought an 01 GSX-R 750 from a friend of mine, and of course wanted to do an oil change. Smart. Just so that I'll know for myself when to keep up with it. Now, whenever I buy a used machine, that's the first thing I do, is all the fluids and filters. I removed the side drain plug, and about half of a couple less of oil came out. That's the wrong plug. So I made a call and was told it was also a drain plug on the bottom. You are correct. So I took that one out, and nothing came out at all. So I leveled off the bike, and the sight glass is still showing that there is oil in it. So my question is, how can there be oil in there, and what is stopping it from draining out completely? It's been a little while. Yeah, that is an 01 750, but yeah, I've fallen for that one on the side before, and only half a few ounces came out. On the bottom of it, there's a couple of different ones that look like drain plugs. And once again, it's been a little while, but I remember it's the one that's furthest down. So my bet is that you're still not on the correct drain bolt yet. That one that you're talking about, I think that was almost like an end cap as far as the machining process further inside of the engine, and that was the way they sealed it up. But my bet is you're not on the actual drain bolt itself. So take another peek under there, make sure that you've got the one all the way at the bottom, and at that point, God, I hope not, make sure there's nothing stuck in there that's keeping the oil from pouring out. So Hopefully that's not the case. So what else do we have for me today? James came back, no programmer, stock everything. And this is still killing the plugs. Okay. When was the last time you looked at your air filter? Because if the air filter is really in bad shape, well, that's going to cause a rich condition, because guess what? It's still sending the same amount of fuel as if your air filter was clean. If it's having to suck through a straw, so to speak, it's going to dump in too much fuel. So go take a look at your air filter and then let me know. All right, James has a 2012 ZX6. It had a small accident, and the forks are not bent, but the front wheel is very close to the exhaust. What do you think the problem is? Your frame's going to be bent. And sorry, that one needs to be parked, because if you're going to change your steering angle at the neck itself by bending it, that's just not something you just bend back into position. So you would need to get another frame up under there. Sorry. All right, low-end gamers ask me, why does the Polaris ATV quit sparking after about 30 seconds of idling? That would be indicative to me of a failing, oh, good grief, it just escaped me. Coil, because those coils, if they start to break, or when they start to break down, and they build up a little bit too much heat, well, that's almost like making, a direct connection from positive to negative, and they're not going to fire anymore. So it's sitting there and it's firing for a little bit until that heat gets up to a certain temperature, and then bam, stops firing, stops sending that spark over to your spark plug. So my bet would be the coil itself. All right, James, take a look at that air filter, and then once again, let us know. All right, Stealth has asked me, I have a 2013 TRX 400X, one of my favorite machines. HMF slip-on with 180 main with the lid off, and I can't get the 2 to 2.5 turns out. Should I start at 3 turns out? On acceleration is resisting a little. So you're trying to take it back to stock then at 2.5 turns out. Well, it's no problem with going to 3. That's actually sending in more fuel. And honestly, I'd rather be a little bit rich than a little too lean. So yeah, go ahead and bring it out a little bit more, so maybe it'll transition into wide open throttle a little bit easier. You're welcome, James. What? Y'all are busy today. Ghost is asking me, I have a 2006 ZX-10 and I had to replace the transmission. When I put it back together, it wouldn't go into first. Went to everything else, but not first. What can that be? Well, obviously, I mean, not obviously, apparently, you made a small mistake on reassembling it. I mean, if you're telling me that the rest of them are fine and it's just that first gear, I almost wonder if you may have reversed it on that shaft. That's kind of what it sounds like. So unfortunately, you're going to have to pop it back open and split it. When you go back to do that, go back and pull up our exploded parts diagrams on Partzilla.com and just study those really close, because they're an exact picture of how that came apart, and more importantly, how you're going to get it back together. You can use it's a great reference tool that I use constantly. Usually when I'm working on these machines, you can't see it, but there is a laptop open, and it's got those exploded parts diagrams up to where I can look at them and to kind of guide me to put things back together, because my advancing years, I can't remember all of this stuff. Come on. All right, low-end gamers tell me you just replaced the coal and CDI, but it still doesn't work right. Well, it's going to be one of those games again. If it's not A, it's not B, well, then it's got to be C. And C is going to be part of your wiring harness. So it's time to get out a voltometer and start taking some readings to make sure wire in to wire end is reading as close to 0 ohms as you can get it, or it'll get it. Depending on your meter, it should be 1 ohm or less. So it's time to start picking through that and see what's going on. Tabitha's asking me, hi, where can I find a secondary throttle valve actuator on a 07 Boulevard? Well, I can't answer that one off the top of my head, but what I would suggest, I keep running back to our website today for some reason, all our exploded parts diagrams. Take a look in there and track it down on the fuel systems. That's going to show you where it is. That's what I would do. Jason's asking me, is there a way to get more power of a 96 Honda Foreman 400? Everything on it is stock. Jason, I wouldn't get too carried away on it. The Foreman is designed to be a utility machine and not something you want to hot rod for the most part, but there's nothing wrong with getting a little bit more oomph out of it. I would go for a middle of the road exhaust and maybe change out the air filters, something from K&N if they offer one for it, and I'd stop there. With those two modifications, you will probably need to adjust your jetting on your carburetor about 1 jet size to get it back in the ballpark so it doesn't run too lean. All right, William's asking me, I have an 05 WR250 and it blows the main fuse every 4 to 5 starts, but if I kick it, it's fine. Well, it sounds like your starter is probably on its way out and it's just drawing way too much current than that fuse is designed for, and it's popping it. So my bet would be it's probably going to be your starter, and that's going to be more up to you to listen to it to make sure it's actually engaging into the starting gear correctly. I have seen them where the actual gear wasn't the starter, but it was the reduction gear and that one-way clutch that was just binding up, and that was making the starter have to work a little bit too hard. And that's what was popping the fuse. But either way, it's either the starter going bad or you've got a mechanical binding issue on the starting gears that are inside or past the starter itself. Stealth, no problem, and hopefully your wrist heals quickly. Oh boy, I've run into this before. Leah's asking me, I have an 03 Honda 350 Rancher, one of my favorite machines. I had the same one in yellow, I mean not yellow, orange, and I can't pull the rear brake off. Yeah, I've run up on that before. More than likely the brakes they've worn into that hub on the inside, or the drum rather, and then water has gotten in there, and then it'll still rotate, but when you go to try to pull, it won't get off that edge. So let me go back in my memory here. You have to release the clutch arm, I mean not the clutch arm, the brake arm itself to get it to rotate in far enough to get those to clear. Another trick I've used, if you're going to replace the brake pads anyway, go ahead and spray some penetrating oil around it, and then as you're turning it, turn it as you're pulling it, and sometimes that will allow it to get off. But I've run into what you're talking about, and it's very frustrating. All right, guys. Well, good grief, y'all were firing me some good questions today. I love it. But it is 3:30, and I have plans in a little while. So we're going to go ahead and call it a day here shortly. And guys, if you would take note of all these questions from Philip James and Crichton Off-Road and the rest of them, and we'll start off with those next week. So y'all tune back in, and we will get those questions answered. All right. Y'all have a great weekend. Thanks for stopping in and spending some time with us. And God willing, we will see you next Friday. Y'all have a great day.